All right guys, so we are on the step 3 of a 3-part build series that we've been putting together. So this one is particularly for the 4-door Integra. You guys are familiar with the car, it's been on the channel, we've had a lot of fun with it. We put ITBs on the stock long block, but it wasn't quite enough power for what we wanted. That being said, we put together a build series on how to build your block, how to do piston to valve clearances, how to mechanically limit your VTC gear, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Today we're gonna be doing how to build the cylinder head and install the cylinder head onto the engine. Since we'll be leaning hard on this engine and we're already upgrading the camshafts to BC Stage 2s, we're also installing a set of BC valve springs and retainers that have a seat pressure of 80 pounds, which is perfect for what we'll be doing with this engine. Before installing those, we cleaned up the stock valves, lapped them to the seats, and installed new seals as well. For the valve seal install, we picked up a nice guided punch from Amazon that makes the install a lot easier. For the valve train installation, it's important to oil all moving components to avoid a dry start situation, and some engine assembly grease can come in handy when you're installing your keepers to the retainers. Now that we've wrapped up the valve spring installation, let's go ahead and move on to installing the cylinder head directly to the block. We already have the other dowel on the cylinder head from when we were doing the piston to valve clearances, so we're not gonna fish that out. That's just gonna sit in perfectly right there. All the surfaces have been wiped off cleanly. And now, this can just set into place. There we go. We've already prepared the head studs with the proper lubricants on them, as well as the nut and the washer assembly pre-threaded on the top. Makes it a lot easier. Some people prefer to place the cylinder head over the studs. Other people prefer to do it this method. This is a lot easier than doing it the other way. But if you want an in-depth how-to on this, we actually did upload a video on the Real Street Performance YouTube. You guys can check that out for more information. Using a 3/16 Allen bit, these just get threaded in. They don't get torqued down like the nut itself will, but what I like to do, I'll bottom them out, take off a little, and then bring it back down. So as a rule of thumb, guys, when you're about to install either head studs or head bolts or any kind of hardware, the hole where the thread is actually engaging, so the bore of where the bolt goes, it needs to be clean. Any contaminant or any fluid or any grease or oil, whatever it is, can really damage not only the threads if it gets all gummed up, but also the torque value of what you're actually securing down. So if there's something in there that's not supposed to be in there, you won't achieve the proper clamping, especially on something like this. Is very important, of the head to the block, and it's something you should really look into and at least clean beforehand.
Can you crack a block if it's dirty?
Yeah, you could actually crack some stuff. The block is really rigid, so you can't really easily crack it, but there have been situations where on different types of engines, they'll crack the top of where the bolt sits in. So it's definitely possible, and it's just good practice to always clean it out. So right now we have, just with the speed wrench, we're gonna go ahead and snug down all the nuts. This does get torqued down afterwards, but we wanna make sure that all the mating surface is fully down. So I got a couple messages on Instagram these last couple days since I've been posting this speed wrench T-handle thing. Where can you get one of these? And this was actually super cheap. It was on Amazon. I'll link it down below. It's very, very smooth. It has a couple different angles or different heights. Makes working on stuff like this a breeze. We're doing a final torque of 80 foot-pounds for these head studs. So we're gonna start off, let's say somewhere around 30. So if you were to go to 90, it'd be like 30, 60, 90. But since we're not going to 90, we're only doing 80 as the final one, we're gonna stop around, let's say 55. Now this isn't an exact number that you have to follow. It's more of a rule of thumb to equally bring the cylinder head down evenly. You don't wanna start with a loose cylinder head and go immediately to 80, then immediately to 80. You wanna gradually bring the full surface down together. Also, make sure you get enough range when you're tightening this. You don't want to be going little bit, and then stopping before you can hit that value. You want one sweeping motion per torque value. So final torque value of 80 foot-pounds right there. As a reference, what I like to do, I'll write down all the values of what I'm working with immediately right here. So 80 foot-pounds for that. The reluctor wheels on the back of the camshafts, 29 foot-pounds. The intake and exhaust cam gear is written down. The heads for the cam assembly, all that stuff, I'll write it down. I've done quite a bit of these engines, so most of the time it's something that I just remember, but it's always good to have a reference point that you can just quickly look back to. So final torque, I'm gonna come on this side so I can put my foot on the opposing side of the engine stand. Have a little more control. There we go. So next we have this camshaft holder assembly. This has the rockers, the bolts, the caps, everything you'll need to actually keep the cylinder head assembly together. So I'll set those up like that. There we go. Okay, and each cap is doweled, so you'll have them go into their spaces like that. These can come down. You'll see the dowels on the bottom section of those camshaft riders will start to fit into those holes. Watch them fall. So here's a close-up shot. There's one small pin that's a solid piece right there. Then on the inside of the center lobe, there is another longer solid pin. And then on this right side, there's a spring and then a hollow pin. So that's what's kind of giving that pressure. You don't want to lose any of that stuff. If you do, it'll be a bad day. All right, so we're gonna remove these caps. Everything's in position right now. A little bit of assembly lube. We're gonna go liberally everywhere right here. We already have some engine oil in there from when we were doing the piston to valve clearancing, but we want a little extra. I'll roll the rockers like this, get assembly lube everywhere on it. Now to the camshafts, we're also gonna be adding some assembly lube. Since it's a brand new camshaft, we wanna make sure that all of it's lubricated well. So this might take a little bit, but you want to make sure to basically embed that assembly lube or grease or whatever you're using into the actual lobes. There's a dot right there that's supposed to go upwards for TDC, and then lines right here that'll be reference point between the two camshafts. So we're gonna get it close to that. If you remember when we put the cylinder head on, I had brought all the pistons almost level in the block. That way we get this close, and then we normally bring the piston up to TDC afterwards to not have things, you know, hitting each other when you're torquing the cylinder head on or putting the camshafts on like that.
Define TDC, what is that?
Top dead center. So great question. If you're not familiar with TDC, it's where the piston number one, typically referred to TDC with, is all the way to the top of its stroke. So it's at its highest point. This would be TDC, right? Somewhere around right there. If you look at the gap between these journals of the camshaft, see how it lifts? You see that right there? How it's lifting? That's where on TDC, these valves are trying to open. And if you're going to assemble the camshaft caps while it's at perfect TDC, then you're gonna have all the spring pressure from the actual valve springs fighting you. So if you're off a couple teeth like this, you're more than fine to torque it while it's at a very resting state. It's a lot easier. And remember, our pistons are, once again, down, so we can do that. But if you just go straight for TDC, you're gonna be fighting this. On some engines, this narrow band is a lot tighter than others. For K-Series, you have a little bit of movement that can happen between these two areas right there. But like on a JZ, it's super crucial to be careful with it because things like that can break very easily. And although we already saturated this camshaft just a little bit more assembly lube where the caps will ride, just a hair more. The only two that we're not going to tighten out of these are these two center section ones, because it's also a guide for the timing chain. Once we put the chain on, then we'll go ahead and put these, but we'll tighten everything else. And there is a sequence for it. I'll put that on the screen as well. Basically what you want to do is start in the center, work your way out in a circular pattern, as most things of that nature is. Now when you get to the section that it's starting to really clamp down on it, you'll have a little bit of force behind that bolt, because you are starting to open some of the springs a little bit. Ha! 8.9. We're supposed to go to 8.7. Close, but no cigar. Awesome. A little over, still within its limit. 85.2. There's a really nice OEM tool that fits perfectly in that bore and gets you spot on, but we just use little screwdrivers. It's okay. Timing chain right here. We've already lubricated this once before from when we did the piston to valve clearancing. We're still gonna add a little bit of assembly lube onto it. But the good thing about these timing chains, there are marked chain links. So we have a double mark right there. You see the color's different. This one and this one are both double colored, 2 links. That's for the dots on the camshaft. And then there's a single link on the bottom section that goes to the dot on the crankshaft. So makes putting this in timing super easy. We're gonna start by lining up the 2 in the top. And it normally gets almost perfect. So you see right there, we're just a hair off. That's because we don't have the exact tool for the dowels on the back. Just gonna give that a little twist. Right there, perfect in place. So those are good. Now we're gonna go down to this section right here. We're just gonna put it around the sprocket. It doesn't need to grab on, it just dangles right there. We're gonna start by putting the guides on. There's 3 10mm bolts, and these will sit right there. Then you have a pivoting guide arm that goes onto the left section we'll put on afterwards. Now that we have the guides in place, we can go ahead and bring the crankshaft up to TDC and align the dot on the bottom side. So there's 2 TDC signifiers. There's the dot that will line up with the chain, and then there's an arrow right there that goes to an arrow stamped on the block. All right, now we can put that guide in its space. Tensioner can swing back up and into that slot. Nice. There's a specific inside and outside on this pulse plate for the bottom, so the crankshaft has the right position. We want to make sure that it says outside. Very important. So this is the OEM timing tensioner guide for the oil pump. There's also this aftermarket piece that we're going to be putting into this so that we can also retain the bottom of the timing chain. If you're servicing the engine or changing camshafts and you don't have one of these, then when you pull the top chain, it's very likely that the bottom will come out of timing. So this just kind of saves us a step in the future if we were to do some other stuff. Before we put the timing chain cover on, we have this brand new OEM Honda seal that we need to press in here. It goes right into this section right here and you knock it down so it's recessed and the crank pulley won't hit it on the outside. It's close. Nice.
Nice.
Watch this, ready? What? What? That's crazy. All of our bolts already set aside for the timing chain cover. There are 2 of the 10mm bolts, M6 thread, that are a little bit different and they have this shoulder in it. So these 2 go on the very bottom holes. Don't confuse them with a standard 10mm because this aligns and acts as a dowel for the timing chain cover. We've already wiped all the surfaces clean, so we're good on that end. Get a bolt. Can you pass me that 10, please?
What?
Can you pass me that 10mm?
What?
I put the socket in the wrong spot. I'm sorry. Mechanic. Thank you, Kevin. Bobby, please. It's drying, bro. Thank you. Thank you. Man, you're just doing everything. Appreciate that. Kevin's basically assembling all this. I ain't paying you nothing. Cancel.
Fast and the Furious scene of a guy getting his head into the engine bay.
Got no engines! Brand new gasket and strainer. This goes right here. Torque to spec, Boppy. This is a USDM engine, so it does have a pressure switch on there. Some of the JDM engines, well, all of the JDM engines don't. So you might not be used to seeing that if you buy an imported engine. There we go, clicks into place.
Next time a guy says your sensors are not reading correctly, it's because they're not torqued down.
Got to. All right, guys, so that pretty much wraps up the assembly for this K24 A2 long block. Like we said, it's a 12.5 to 1 compression piston, Manley H-beam rod. We have BC Stage 2 cams and supporting valve springs and retainers, as well as a couple other goodies to support all those modifications. We plan to put this into the 4-door Integra for short-term plans. You guys are gonna be really excited what we're doing with that car in the near future, so stay tuned for that. But before this lives a life in that Integra, we wanted to mess with things here at work at Real Street with the engine dyno. So for that, we are going to introduce a light 50% nitro mix. So a lot of you guys might have seen the videos on the Real Street channel that we mess with about 12% nitro with a different K24, but that was a stock bottom end. So now that we have some upgraded internals, we feel comfortable pushing it. If you guys wanna see that, make sure to check out the Real Street channel as well. And we'll be posting some teasers here also on the SB Tuning channel. Thank you guys for watching. And like always, we'll see you in the next video.